never planned on staying overnight at the self-storage facility, but sometimes life corners you. My new apartment wasn't ready. My friend's couch fell through, and my entire existence, boxes of clothes, old photos, the cheap dresser had carried up 3 flights of stairs, was crammed into Unit 17. The place was a concrete maze on the edge of town, surrounded by fields so flat and empty, they felt like the world just ended past the floodlights. I told myself it would only be for one night. I propped a folding chair against the door, arranged my sleeping bag atop the boxes, and tried to ignore how the air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and damp cardboard. I remember thinking, at least it was quiet. That was the first lie I told myself. Even as I sat there, unlocking my phone to scroll away my anxiety, I noticed the low hum of the facility's lights never stayed steady. The pitch seemed to shift, almost like it was breathing. Somewhere down the row, a distant metallic clatter echoed, sharp and sudden in the stillness. Probably just the wind, I thought. The loading bay doors rattled sometimes, and after dark, the wind turned every ordinary sound into something unfamiliar. But the wind didn't explain how I started hearing soft footsteps, measured and slow, from the corridor outside my metal door. They would stop for long stretches, so long I convinced myself I'd imagined them, then return, just as I was about to doze off. I pressed my ear against the cool, ribbed metal. Nothing. Still. My skin prickled like I was being watched. I tried to distract myself, texting friends who were already asleep, checking the time obsessively. Midnight, then 12:30. On the other side of the thin wall, a storage unit slammed shut. The noise was so sudden I jerked upright, knocking over my water bottle. I waited, holding my breath. No other sounds followed. I told myself someone else must be storing their things late, though I hadn't seen another car in the lot since I arrived. The minutes dragged on. I finally decided to get up and use the restroom. The only one was down the main corridor, near the office. I fished my headlamp from my backpack, since the main lights tripped off at 1 in the morning, leaving only dim emergency strips flickering along the ceiling. As I slid open the door, a gust of cold air swept in, carrying the faint scent of old tires and something musty like wet carpet. The corridors felt different at night. The rows of metal doors, all identical, seemed to lean in under the sickly green glow. I tried to walk quickly, the slap of my sneakers echoing too loudly. My own shadow bent and stretched on the walls, twisting strangely with each step. At the end of the hall, I glanced over my shoulder. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure standing at the far end, just beyond the reach of the light. I blinked hard. The corridor was empty. I reached the bathroom and flicked on the harsh fluorescent. The mirror was dusty, and I caught my reflection. Eyes wide and ringed with fatigue, jaw clenched tighter than I realized. I splashed cold water on my face, reminding myself it was just nerves. People worked the night shift here all the time. The facility was locked up. Nobody could get in. That thought gave me some comfort, at least until I heard the unmistakable scuff of footsteps outside the bathroom door. I froze. The footsteps stopped just as suddenly. My heart thudded in my chest. I waited, counting silently. But there was nothing, just the hum of the light above me, flickering in and out. I tried to laugh it off, told myself maybe it was the security guard doing rounds. But when I opened the door, the hallway was empty. I'm a mist, and in's cold. Bastananay nor seizia board. The green emergency lights buzzed overhead, casting the corridor in a strange underwater glow. I hesitated, half expecting someone to be lingering just out of sight. But there was nothing except the echo of my own breathing. The door to the bathroom creaked as it swung behind me, and for a second I caught my own warped reflection in its stainless steel surface, my face stretched and anxious, eyes darting to corners. I started back toward my unit, forcing my steps to stay calm and measured, though every instinct screamed at me to run. I tried to focus on the ordinary, the numbered plaque screwed into each identical door, the faintly sweet chemical smell of the concrete floors, the slight scrape of my bag's zipper against my hip. But the further I walked, the more the hallway seemed to shift. There was a subtle wrongness. Doors I didn't remember, an extra fire extinguisher mounted where I'd swear there was none before, the numbers on the unit slightly out of sequence. I slowed as I passed Unit 22. The lock was hanging open, swinging gently, as if someone had only just been there. The cold air felt suddenly heavier. It took effort to keep moving, to ignore the urge to check inside. I kept my eyes forward, but as I passed, I could have sworn I heard a whisper, just the faintest syllable, like breath leaking through a cracked vent. I told myself it was air pressure, maybe the pipes, anything but a voice. Almost at my unit, I stumbled. The floor had buckled slightly, a hairline crack spiderwebbing out from the base of a door. I crouched, running my fingers along it. The concrete was damp and strangely warm, as if something pulsed weakly beneath it. A faint vibration tickled my palm. I jerked my hand away, heart pounding. I forced a laugh, too loud in the silence. "It's nothing," I muttered, but my voice sounded unfamiliar, thin. I stood, sliding my key into Unit 17's padlock with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Inside, I closed the door and wedged the folding chair tighter beneath the handle. I pressed my forehead to the chill of the metal, trying to slow my breathing. I scrolled through my phone again, but the Wi-Fi was out, just a spinning wheel and no service. A wave of dread settled over me like a wet blanket. I turned off my headlamp, trying to rest, but the dark didn't feel restful. Every noise, the settling of the boxes, the whir of my small battery fan, stood out too sharply against the hush. After what felt like hours, I realized the humming overhead had shifted again. It wasn't constant anymore. It rose and fell in slow, deliberate swells. In the pauses, I could hear something else. A faint tapping, irregular and soft, like fingernails on metal. I sat up, straining to listen. The tapping seemed to come from the wall behind my stacked boxes. It would pause, then resume, always in threes. Tap, tap, tap. Dot. Wait. Oh. Tap, tap, tap. Dot. Got. I moved closer, trying to pinpoint the sound. My mouth was dry, and my hands shook as I pressed my ear to the cold steel. The tapping stopped, replaced by a faint scraping, as if something dragged along the other side. A sudden, sharp knock made me flinch back, heart slamming against my ribs. I stared at the blank wall, waiting for the noise to repeat. Nothing. The silence pressed in, almost buzzing. I crawled back to my sleeping bag, tucking my knees to my chest. I tried to steady myself, listing reasons why it was all explainable. Pipes, rodents, maybe the wind rattling something loose. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that empty corridor. The endless repeating doors, each one a little off, like a dream you can't quite wake from. I told myself I'd make it till sunrise, that nothing could hurt me inside a locked metal box. But the thought didn't comfort me anymore. My sense of time dissolved. Minutes dragged, then snapped forward, like I was skipping scenes in a movie I didn't remember starting. I snapped awake at some point to the sound of metal shifting, so close it vibrated the floor beneath me. My phone read 3:14 a.m., though the screen was stuck at that time no matter how often I checked. I sat rigid, listening. The humming overhead was gone. In its place, I heard breathing. Deep, ragged, impossibly close. It wasn't mine. I held my breath, hoping it would vanish. But it only grew louder, rasping in and out, coming from right behind the stack of boxes. I scrambled to my feet, knocking into a tower of old textbooks. Something toppled in the dark, landing with a muffled thud. The breathing stopped. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, slow and deliberate, I heard the sliding of something heavy, a box, maybe, or a body, dragged across the concrete just outside my unit. I pressed my hands over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The silence dragged on, stretching so thin I thought it would snap. Then came a voice, low, muffled, like someone speaking through water. It called my name, just once, then again, softer the second time. I didn't recognize it, but it knew me. I wanted to shout, to bang on the door and demand to be let out, but my throat closed up. I waited, barely breathing, as the voice repeated my name, each time more insistent, almost pleading. My phone vibrated in my hand, screen flaring to life. An unfamiliar number flashed. I answered without thinking, desperate for any contact with the outside world. Static hissed in my ear, and then my own voice echoed back at me, warped and offbeat, repeating words I hadn't said. The line went dead. I dropped the phone, stumbling backward. The tapping started again. Closer, now coming from the other side of the thin metal door. Tap, tap, tap. Dot. I grabbed the folding chair, bracing it tight as the handle rattled violently. Something was trying to get in. The sound of keys jingled, then a low, guttural laugh, as if the thing on the other side found the whole scene amusing. I fumbled in the dark, hands closing around my flashlight. I shone it at the door, the beam shaky, dust motes spinning in the cone of light. The tapping stopped. The handle twisted one last time, then fell silent. I waited, counting seconds, heart in my throat. Without warning, the emergency lights outside flickered and died. The faint green glow bled away, leaving only my flashlight's narrow circle. In the pitch black, the storage unit seemed to breathe around me. Air shifting, walls settling, a feeling of immense pressure. I thought I saw movement, a shadow slipping between the cracks at the floor, impossibly thin and stretching toward me. Desperation took over. I grabbed my backpack and shoved aside the boxes, clawing through my piles for anything that felt like a weapon. The metal walls seemed to close in, bowing inward with each breath. From somewhere deep in the facility, an alarm began to wail, a high, piercing sound that echoed through the labyrinth of corridors, bouncing off doors and concrete, never quite fading. I bolted for the door, tearing the chair away, fumbling with the lock. My hands were slick with sweat. The padlock clicked, and I yanked the door open. The corridor was black and endless. The emergency,